Well, today is Friday, December 21st, 2012. As many of you know, today has been predicted by the Mayans that, or should I say, not by the Mayans, but those who have found a Mayan calendar. The Mayans actually think it's ridiculous. But for those who have found a calendar, and it stopped at this date today, and now I hope we can all get past it. If you're listening to this video, that means that you have made it past the dreaded date of December 21st, 2012, which was supposed to be our last day on Earth. And of course, this comes on the heels of a 2011 prediction that the rapture would take place. Of course, I wish that any and all of these people would, for once, consult the Bible and present the whole truth. For if they just knew what the Bible said and read it, they would avoid much inaccurate speculation, predictions, and embarrassment. But that's not why I'm presenting a video today. Something came out yesterday that I wanted to hit on, something that I've been hitting on in the last, well, actually for quite some time. I have predicted that eventually Israel would be put under the gun to negotiate with Hamas and Fatah, or would face isolation from the international community. In fact, Hamas has said that in a recent article that I highlighted and had a video on, that now Hamas even says they want to have peace with Israel. You may want to go back and look at that video that I presented. It wasn't that much, I think it was back on November the 22nd, so it wasn't that far back on the list. And that followed on the heels of the UN awarding the Palestinian Authority non-state member status. And in between those two articles, I also wrote an article that was that stated, says Israeli-Hamas ceasefire, what the next phase is from this point on. Well, I believe the next phase is going to be that Israel will eventually have to negotiate with Hamas, and they very well may be facing isolation in the very near future. And that seems to be the goal of the Palestinian officials. And let me go ahead and read this article. It states that weeks ahead of Israeli elections, Palestinian officials are already plotting a series of tough steps against Israel to be taken if, as polls predict, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is re-elected and peace efforts remain stalled. Emboldened by their newly upgraded status at the United Nations, the Palestinians are talking of filing war crimes charges against Israel, staging mass demonstrations in the West Bank, encouraging the international community to impose sanctions, and ending the security cooperation that has helped preserve quiet in recent years. And judging from what happened back, like I said, back in late November, when the UN did give the Palestinians membership, they have the sympathy of the vast majority of countries in the United Nations. So I see in the future that probably even the U.S. will come to reluctantly sanction or allow sanctions to happen against Israel out in the open, but in secret they're probably all for it. Of course, that's speculation, but I would bet my life that that would be what the president's next steps will be as far as the Middle East is concerned. And there's also an article you may want to go back and look at, which is back on November 9th. The title is Obama plans to get rid of Netanyahu, bring about Palestinian state, and make deal with Iran. You may want to go back and take a look at that article as well, because that, I believe, is something that probably will take place as well. Now, I don't necessarily believe that Obama will bring the peace, but I think that he will set the stage for a peace to be taken seriously. And I do believe that his undercover plan is to try to either get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu, which I don't believe that's going to happen, but if it does fail, I think he's going to make it extremely difficult on him in his coming term as Israeli Prime Minister. And like I said, that could in fact include sanctions, or it could include, and I should say and or, because it could be both, him making an agreement with Iran that the Israelis simply find irresponsible and not to their liking. Whatever it is, I do believe that it wouldn't shock me a bit, I should say, that if that Obama will make an agreement with Iran that will almost to the point give Iran, if it doesn't give Iran, the ability to create a nuclear weapon. Of course, there's been reports out that that Iran has the materials to make somewhere between 10 and 20 not nuclear bombs, but atomic bombs with a power that was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki back in World War II. Although these do not have the strength of the nuclear bombs that we have today, they're still very powerful and could do some serious damage, if not destroy the complete nation of Israel, if all of those bombs were sent Israel's way at one time. But that's right now. They believe that they have this the material to create these bombs. And a good question is, if that's the case, why in the world hasn't Israel already reacted or acted to prevent this from happening? Well, that's a good question, and I hope that question can be answered in the near future. But let's get back to the article. It says, emboldened by their newly upgraded status at the United Nations, the Palestinians are talking of filing war crimes against Israel, staging mass demonstrations in the West Bank, encouraging the international community to impose sanctions, and ending the security cooperation that has helped preserve quiet in recent years. These plans, combined with growing international impatience with Israeli settlement construction on occupied land, could spell trouble and international isolation for the Israeli leader. In a series of interviews with the Associated Press, a number of Palestinian officials all voiced a similar theme. Following the UN General Assembly's recognition of Palestine as a non-member observer state in November, the status quo cannot continue. The 2013 will see a new Palestinian political track. There will be new rules in our relationship with Israel and the world, said Hussam Zumlat, an official in President Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah movement. Israeli-Palestinian peace talks broke down shortly before Netanyahu's election in Israel in early 2009 and have remained frozen throughout his term, mostly due to this dispute over Israel's construction of settlements in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. The Palestinians claim the areas, along with the Gaza Strip, for the future state. Israel captured these areas, of course, back in 1967. Now, of course, they don't mention the fact that, well, I guess they do it later on. It says that the Palestinians have demanded that Israel halt settlement construction before negotiations can resume, saying the continued building is a show of bad faith. But Netanyahu says talks should resume without preconditions and notes that a 10-month partial freeze on construction he imposed 2 years ago failed to bring about substantive negotiations. Frustrated with the impasse, the Palestinians turned to the UN for recognition of an independent state in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza. Israel, which withdrew from Gaza in 2005, rejects a return to its 1967 borders. Now here's something you may want to pay attention to. It says, although the UN vote did not change the situation on the ground, it had deep implications. Opposed by just 9 countries, it amounted to a strong international endorsement of the Palestinian position on future borders. It also cleared the way for them to join international agencies to press their grievances against Israel. Netanyahu has accused the Palestinians of bypassing direct negotiations. And the article goes on just to have one of the spokesmen for Netanyahu's administration say that we hope that direct talks will resume. That's the only way that this situation is going to be resolved. But at the heart of the deadlock are the huge gaps between the two sides' conditions. Netanyahu embraced the idea of establishing a Palestinian state alongside Israel. Without action soon, the thinking goes, Israel will find itself in permanent control of millions of disenfranchised Palestinians, threatening its status as a democracy with a Jewish majority. Now, of course, that is a fear that the international community may one day throw these Palestinians onto the laps of the Israeli administration. Say, hey, listen, these are now your people. They should now be able to vote. They should now be able to get the same services all Israelis get, and therefore Israel would no longer have a Jewish majority, but it would become a mixture. And of course, you know what that would mean. Soon enough, if that were to take place, Israel would no longer be. Their leaders would therefore be taken out of office through elections and replaced by Arab rulers. And here's what the world believes regarding Netanyahu. It says, but Netanyahu has added so many caveats, including a refusal to turn Jerusalem into a shared capital and demands to retain significant parts of the West Bank, that the Palestinians believe negotiations would be futile. Palestinian officials say they are hopeful that a formula for restarting talks can be found after Israel's elections on January the 22nd, perhaps through a new initiative from President Barack Obama. And here's something I haven't heard yet. It says that the Palestinians have begun to speak of a trial 6-month negotiating period. A top aide to Abbas said that Arab diplomats will present the plan in Western capitals, Russia and China, next month. But with the Palestinians insistent on a settlement freeze, and opinion polls forecasting a new hardline Israeli coalition headed by Netanyahu, expectations are low. Now, of course, the Palestinians are saying the same thing. We want negotiations, but if the Israelis are going to deny us of some of the things that we want in the negotiations, then we'll have to stand pat the way we are. It says, among the options being considered in halting cooperation between Israeli and Palestinian security forces in the West Bank. The cooperation is widely seen as a key element in preserving the calm in the West Bank in recent years, in sharp contrast to the heavy fighting a decade ago. The Palestinians also talk of increasing popular struggle, the term they use for demonstrations against Israeli soldiers. Such face-to-face confrontations frequently turn tense, with protesters throwing stones and troops firing tear gas and water cannons, and run the risk of growing more violent. And of course, what's most alarming is that perhaps most troubling to Israel, the Palestinians also want to use their upgraded status on the world stage to push for international action against Israel. Officials say they will move to join the International Crime Court, where they hope to pursue war crimes against Israel for its settlement activities. Although the road to taking legal action in the ICC appears to be long and complicated, it nonetheless has made Israeli officials jittery. Now it goes on to say this Palestinian agenda, while ambitious, is likely to encounter stiff resistance from both Israel and its international allies. Israel has a number of tools at its disposal, including possible military or economic pressure on the Palestinians. Israel's allies in the West, particularly the U.S., will also likely shield it from any attempt to impose broad international sanctions, at least in the near term, and that should be underlined, in the near term. You know, I believe that once the rapture of the church takes place, many of these allies who have been bolstered by evangelical Christians will, when they are gone, that Israel will no longer have an ally in these Western nations. And as time goes on, you can bet that the U.S. and some of the other allies that Israel supposedly has will harden against Israel, and then you will see the advent, I believe, of the Antichrist, who will use certain pressures to cause Israel and other nations to come to some sort of a peace agreement. Of course, this agreement will be supernatural, will not be seen coming, and will be led by God and inspired by Satan, meaning that all things are controlled under God's leadership, but Satan will be used in order to bring about this peace agreement. After all, he is the God of this world. There is absolutely no government or human that is more powerful than Satan. They are mere putty in the hands of Satan. And if you remember correctly, when Jesus was being tempted by Satan, Satan said, if you'll only bow down and worship me, I will give you the kingdoms of the world. No, of course, that's only possible if God allows him to give the kingdoms of the world. But if God allows it, he absolutely has the power to give to whomever he wishes the kingdoms of this world. So don't think for a minute that any earthly country or power can prevent him from giving away the complete world if God desires that for Satan to do. Satan has the power. It's only if God will allow him to use that power. So I look for the future of the Middle East to be that President Barack Obama will now have a free hand, since now he is no longer tied by the hands of anyone. She placed considerably more pressure upon Israel to do his bidding, and to place extreme pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu, who was likely to be the next prime minister and to be reelected, and for the UN, and for the Palestinians to successfully petition the UN and their members to place heavy sanctions upon Israel. And I expect the threat of sanctions to become even heavier and more intense as we get closer to the rapture of the church. And I fully expect that Israel will come to the conclusion that they have no choice but to either take in the Palestinians into their state, or to give them their own Palestinian state and agree to whatever just to get rid of them. But I certainly see that day coming, in which even if they do have to negotiate with Hamas, and I do see Hamas coming to the negotiation table in the future negotiations. And I know this video is getting a little bit long, but I want to point this out here. It says the European Union has also condemned the planned construction, talking about Israel's planned construction. The 27-member bloc issued a statement earlier this month raising the possibility of requiring Israel to label any exports that originate in the settlements. It also noted that future cooperation agreements would not include territories captured in 1967, including East Jerusalem, which Israel claims as an integral part of its capital. There are fears that individual European states might impose sanctions of their own. And Israeli officials said the extent of the international uproar had caught officials off guard. Something has changed, he said. Clearly, a line has been crossed. He spoke on condition of anonymity because he was discussing closed diplomatic meetings. Yazi Beelan, a former deputy foreign minister and peace negotiator, said there is no way the status quo can continue, and that Netanyahu understands that this situation, where the U.S. is the only one to support Israel, cannot go on forever. So as you can see, the world is moving away from Israel completely, and even I believe even the United States is going to be heading that way. And it's not going to get any better. I believe that we are heading toward the rapture of the church, and then that will be followed by a peace agreement and the start of the tribulation period in that order. And I think it's going to be sooner than most people will anticipate. And with that said, if you don't know the Lord, I think it's about time you make that decision, if you haven't already. And today could be the last day you'll be here on earth. And if that's the case, where would you be? Where would you spend eternity? That's something you need to think about. This is Terry Malone with the Calvary Prophecy Report.